Before iron fought iron, iron killed wood. On March 8, 1862, a strange Confederate warship steamed into Hampton Roads and attacked the Union blockade fleet. It did not look like the old Navy. It looked like a floating roof, armored, slow, ugly, and almost unstoppable against wooden hulls. Its name was CSS Virginia. The ship had once been USS Merrimac. The Confederates razed the wreck, rebuilt it, armored it, and sent it back into the war as a weapon designed to solve one problem: break the blockade. By the end of the afternoon, USS Cumberland was sunk. USS Congress was burning. USS Minnesota was aground. The Union fleet had just watched the future arrive in the worst possible way. Then, after dark, another strange ship came in. USS Monitor. Low in the water, almost invisible compared to the wooden frigates around it. One rotating turret, 2 heavy guns. The next morning, the 2 ironclads fought each other for hours. Neither ship sank. That draw changed naval warfare. The Civil War at sea began with a simple Union idea: squeeze the Confederacy. President Lincoln's blockade was meant to choke off trade, weapons, supplies, and foreign connection. For the Confederacy, breaking that blockade was not a side issue. It was survival. But the Confederacy could not match the Union ship for ship. So Confederate Navy Secretary Stephen Mallory backed a different answer: ironclads. If the South could not build a fleet as large as the Union's, it could try to build ships the Union's wooden vessels could not stop. The best opportunity was sitting in the captured Norfolk Navy Yard. USS Merrimac had been scuttled and burned when Federal forces abandoned the yard in 1861. The Confederates salvaged what they could. They cut the ship down, covered the upper works with iron, added heavy guns, and built a sloped casemate over the hull. When she came back, she was no longer Merrimac. She was CSS Virginia. On March 8, 1862, Virginia steamed into Hampton Roads. The Union ships waiting there were built for a different age: Cumberland, Congress, Minnesota, wooden ships. Tall profiles, broadside guns, crews trained for naval war as it had been understood for generations. Virginia was slow, awkward, and difficult to handle, but against wood, she was terrifying. Around mid-afternoon, Virginia attacked. She traded fire with USS Congress, then turned toward USS Cumberland. At about 3:05 p.m., Virginia rammed Cumberland and tore open the ship's starboard bow. Cumberland fought back. Her crew kept firing. Then she went down. More than 120 sailors died with her. That detail matters. Hampton Roads is often packaged as a duel of machines, but the first day was not clean technology drama. It was men on wooden ships discovering that their weapons could not stop at the armor coming at them. Congress ran aground. Virginia battered her. Congress surrendered and later burned. Minnesota also ran aground, trapped in water too shallow for easy escape and too exposed to ignore. By evening, Virginia had done what she was built to do. She had humiliated the wooden fleet, but she had not finished Minnesota. Darkness, tide, damage, and the wounding of Franklin Buchanan forced the Confederates to break off. Virginia would return in the morning. That night, the Union position looked ugly. Cumberland was gone. Congress was burning. Minnesota was still aground. And then Monitor arrived. USS Monitor was one of the strangest warships afloat. Designed by John Erickson, it sat extremely low in the water. Instead of a traditional broadside, it carried a round armored turret with 2 11-inch Dahlgren guns. The ship did not look heroic. It looked like a raft with a metal cylinder on top. That became part of its legend. But legend is not the useful point. The useful point is that Monitor arrived at exactly the right moment. The Monitor sanctuary material places the ship anchoring near Minnesota at about 9 p.m. The crew had come through a hard passage and still had work to do. The turret mechanism needed attention. The men worked through the night. Behind them, Congress burned. Ahead of them, Virginia would come back. On the morning of March 9th, Virginia returned to Hampton Roads. This time, Freckenbean Bannon was not in command. He had been wounded the day before. Lieutenant Catesby Jones commanded Virginia. The Confederate target was clear. Finish Minnesota. But Monitor moved out to meet Virginia. The fight that followed lasted about 4 hours. This was the part that people remember. Monitor versus Merrimac, though the Confederate ship's name was CSS Virginia. The two ironclads closed and fired. Shots hit armor and bounced away. Monitor's turret gave her a new advantage. She did not need to turn the whole ship to bring guns to bear. Virginia carried more guns, but she was larger, deeper, harder to handle, and no longer had the same ramming weapon she had used against Cumberland. Virginia tried to ram Monitor. It did not work. Monitor fired slowly. Britannica notes that the ship could only fire about once every 7 or 8 minutes. That was not enough to tear Virginia apart. Virginia's guns could hurt Monitor but not destroy her. At one point, a hit near Monitor's pilot house drove fragments into John Worden's eyes and temporarily blinded him. Monitor pulled away briefly. Virginia's crew believed they had done real damage. But Virginia had problems of her own: ammunition, steam, draft, and the outgoing tide. So Virginia withdrew. Monitor did not chase her into a decisive victory. The result was a draw. Draws can be deceptive. If the question is, which ironclad sank the other, Hampton Roads has no winner. But if the question is, did Virginia get another free day to destroy the Union fleet, the answer is no. Monitor stopped that. Virginia had devastated wooden ships on March 8th. On March 9th, Monitor turned the Confederate breakthrough into a contained fight. That was enough. The Union blockade at Hampton Roads survived the immediate crisis. Minnesota survived. The fleet was no longer helpless against Virginia. And everybody watching understood the larger lesson. Wooden warships were finished as the center of naval power. Not someday, now. CSS Virginia and USS Monitor did not get a long rivalry. Virginia was scuttled in May 1862 when Confederate forces withdrew from the Norfolk area. Monitor survived Hampton Roads, but not the sea. She sank in a storm off Cape Hatteras in December 1862. The ships were gone within the year. The change they announced was not. After Hampton Roads, naval power had to account for armor, steam, turrets, low profiles, and industrial design. The duel did not settle the Civil War. It did something narrower and more permanent. It made every major navy look at its wooden ships and see yesterday. Hampton Roads is remembered as Monitor versus Merrimac. That shorthand is useful, but incomplete. The real story is 2 days. First, CSS Virginia proved that wooden ships could be slaughtered by an armored warship. Then, USS Monitor proved that the answer to iron was iron. Nobody got the clean victory. Everybody got the message. The old Navy had burned in Hampton Roads. The new one had arrived overnight.